Welcome to the ForYou podcast. You might be wondering why Andrew isn't here, why Michael isn't here, and that's because we kicked them out. We are doing the Women's Takeover podcast, and we are so excited you're here to join us. Welcome to the women's edition, ladies, of the ForYou podcast.
Yay.
I'm your host, Kate, for today's podcast. I'm very excited to be here. We have Danny behind the camera.
Woo!
Making us look and sound good. And our guest is Julie. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me on this first edition.
Yeah, so why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm known as Miss Julie, and I've been here at Fellowship Chapel on staff as the family ministry director for 14 years. November 1st actually was my anniversary. So
wow, perfect timing then in November.
I know. Who would have thought?
To be recording.
Exactly.
So, Julie, I've known you for a very long time, but I have always wondered, and I'm sure many other people have, how did you become the Miss Julie?
That's kind of interesting, Miss Julie, because that's like my identity now, but it didn't always start that way. So back when I was in high school, I, like a lot of the high schoolers here at our church, I was very active in helping out in the kids' programs there. On Wednesday nights, for instance, my mom was a helper in Awanas, and before the youth group would start, I'd go in and help her. I'd listen to the little kids say their verses. They're so cute. And then, when we were done with that, then I would go to my youth group time, and I was, your typical youth group person, very active. But one day, out of the blue, a woman came up to me, and she basically said, I'm paraphrasing here, I see potential in you, and I have an opportunity for you. What do you think? And so the opportunity was she would pay for me to be a part of this training program through Child of Vision Fellowship.
Wow.
And she would even go so far as to pick me up and take me to it and then help me with any of the supplies I needed. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, most high schoolers, hey, I don't have anything else to do. Sounds like a great potential. And so I said, sure, I'll do it. Not fully understanding, I think, what I was getting into. But the first week, she came and picked me up on time. We drove to the meeting and, we came in, and in my mind, I'm expecting there's going to be, a room full of people and, this is going to be really powerful. And it was just me and the woman who brought me and the woman who was leading the group, her husband. So in my mind, I'm thinking it's going to be 50 people, and it's 3. But the cool thing about it was while I was there, she shared with us how to teach kids, how to talk to kids, how to teach the gospel, how to share your story about Jesus with other people. And when you're in high school, that's pretty powerful opportunity to be presented. And so as part of that also, she would go through the lesson of the week. So there was a lesson that I was supposed to teach on Sunday, and it was multiple pages of little fine print text. And you would think, what training do you need to present a lesson? But I tell you, running a flannel graph is way more complicated than you would think. Pulling those
that's
two.
A throwback, a flannel graph.
I know. Isn't that funny? I know. I still remember trying to peel the cloths apart, so you can get to the next scene. But in typical high school fashion, at first, I was so excited. This would be like Tuesday I'd have it, and by Wednesday, I was so excited I'd be memorizing the script and practicing. And, of course, as time went on and you get comfortable with it, it would be Sunday morning and I'd be cramming at the last minute. Okay, I got to memorize 3 pages.
Like every high schooler.
Exactly. So true confessions. But it was really powerful. And so the upside to that was I was a senior in high school when I started, and I would be a part of the adult choir because I sang in choir at school. And then when I finished that, I would go into the gym and I would play the piano for the littles so we could sing their cute little songs. I know, all those fun songs. And then I would teach the lesson. And it was just really powerful as a high schooler to be able to have that much influence on the lives of kids.
Yeah.
The other cool thing about it, in hindsight, at the time, I would maybe be a little skeptical or hesitant or mostly embarrassed. But, if I did something wrong, or if I could have done something better, or I misspoke or whatever, the woman who, was leading me, she was confident enough to correct me. And so I learned early on, to be prepared, how to get things ready, and, to take it seriously. Like this is a big calling.
Yeah, so you mentioned that she saw potential in you. And that's a big deal, especially for an adult to come to a kid and say, like, I see something in you special. Do you think that affects the way that you now look at, the kids and the youth that you interact with and that you're the family ministry director for?
That's a really good question. Because as I reflect on it more and more, I would have to say strongly yes. I love kids. Like everybody who knows me knows that I just love to be with kids. And because somebody saw the potential in me for greater things, I look for that in kids. Yeah. And probably when I started, I wasn't so intentional about it. It just kind of happened. But as I've gotten older, I've realized the impact in the lives of a child. If you take the time to say, I like how you do this, or you must be really proud of how you play that sport, or you have an ability and a talent that I don't. Tell me about it. Help me to understand a little bit more about you. And then I like to give opportunities for kids, even within our own programming, to volunteer and have more positions of authority than maybe the average high schooler would get the opportunity to have. On my desk, I keep it there. So just as a reminder for me, it was a quote that says, for every compliment that a child receives, they receive 6 negative or critical comments.
Wow.
And so if you think about it, like that's a huge mountain to overcome. The kids are being barraged by all these negative, you're not good enough, you're not fill in the blank. And so if I can, in the life of a kid, inspire them with one helpful, encouraging piece of information to take that average down a little bit, I feel like I've done my job.
If one person has like that one person in their life that gives them encouragement and believes in them, but will also be there for them when they do fall short and fail, then that's like the one thing that they need to continue living their life and being like content, and also like finding what they can contribute to the world and what they can contribute to the kingdom in our case.
Yeah, that's good. That's very impactful. So back in high school and college, and even after college, you volunteered with the kids a lot. Did you ever see yourself ending up in this position working at a church? You're the family ministry director now. Did you ever see that coming?
So the answer, no. When I was in high school, I was a super math and science geek. I loved math. I loved science. In fact, I still do. In fact, I will argue for a good word problem most days because I just love math that much. But so when I went to college, I went as with the idea that I would be getting a degree in engineering. And I still did have opportunities to volunteer to help at our church while I was in college. But when I graduated and started attending fellowship, there were still a lot of needs for volunteers here. I started in service circles, which was the way we scheduled the nursery. You would be in one of 4 circles, and every 4 months you would have 1 month where you would serve. You would watch the babies anytime there was an event happening at church. So Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, you would be in the nursery, and then you'd take 3 months off.
That's a full-time commitment.
It was.
That's different than now, where it's just one Sunday.
It was a little more intense. And then as I did that for several years, then there became an opening in teaching preschoolers. And I love teaching preschoolers. So I helped out there. And then over time, they needed somebody to coordinate the schedule of who's going to teach when, and then what curriculum do we use, and when do we buy it. So I stepped into, a little more leadership roles that way. And then Wednesday nights, I love kids, and Wednesday nights was a great opportunity for me to come and hang out with some kids and have fun.
Nice. So a lot of volunteering, but you ended up here still. So how did you become staff at Fellowship? Where did that whole story start?
So it started in 2009. I was attending a children's conference that was in the area. And usually when we get to at the end of the conference, when we get to hey, can we pray for each other time? Usually there's not a whole lot that I feel compelled to share. But this time there was a transition in leadership here at our church. And so where there was some focus on children's program, it was changing to other ministries, which was good. I mean, the other ministries still needed focus, but in my world, children's were was near and dear to my heart. And so I just, in this meeting, I shared, we have this opening there. I feel like there's this need for a leader in our children's ministry. And so the woman sitting next to me looked at me and she said with a total straight face, well, what about you? And you could have knocked me off the chair, because to be quite honest, I had never thought about me doing anything more than volunteering for children's ministry. And so I went home that night. It was a Saturday. And I think I tossed and turned for a week. Every night I would go to bed and the thought was still just rolling around in my brain. And so at first I was like, no, there's no way it could be me. To, well, if it was me, we could, I could change this, or there's this area we could improve. And so by the end of tossing and turning for a week, I got to the point in my mind that I was a little bit excited, oh, if I do this, I could see some good things coming out of it. So I shared it with my husband, and as most people who've spent any time with me know, I'm really busy. And he was like, are you sure you have time for this?
Always have been, always will be. Busy.
Exactly. True story. But then I shared with them, the interesting thing is, as I'm, wrestling through it, I come up with 16 different things that I would like to see improved or make changes, or, let's just call them goals. I would have 16 goals for the ministry. And so I shared them with him. And as I shared them with him, he got more and more excited about it.
Yeah.
And so, I'm a firm believer in, I need his support. He's my husband, and I'm not going to proceed if he feels like it's not the best thing for me. But he was all for it. And so I'm like, okay, great. So I'm like, what should my next step be?
Yeah.
Well, let's write a letter. So I wrote a letter to the elder board.
Not an email, a letter.
A letter. Although maybe I emailed it, Their email did exist in 2009.
I'm just kidding.
But I wrote a letter to the elder board, and in it I explained my heart. I explained, that I'd volunteered with kids, that I was passionate about kids, and that I saw there was a void, and I was willing to fill that void. And if I did, I had goals and plans that I would love to do. I did. And, let me know if this is something that you would consider. And I should add, as part of it, I didn't want the role with all the responsibility, but without any authority. And so I said, and then if I could have a small stipend just to give me that authority as I'm making changes, where people see me not just as a volunteer, but, as somebody on staff.
Yeah.
And so, I prayed about it. I wrestled with God about it. I thought about it. I was excited about it. I submitted the letter, and I was waiting with anticipation for the yes. And God, answering my prayer in a big way. And wouldn't you know, they said, thank you, but no thank you.
Wow.
And I was like, what? God, you clearly opened these doors. And not only I felt like the doors were open, but windows. I was like, I am on a trajectory for excitement here. Let's go. And so in that season, I did a lot of reflecting. Okay, was I overstepping my bounds? Was I not hearing God's voice clearly enough? Did I, what was it? Where was the disconnect? Because I felt in that season I had done something wrong. And so eventually you just come to a point where you're like, okay, I just have to trust God in the process. So I thought this was the right thing. Clearly it's not, but I'm going to continue to volunteer. So I still showed up. I still, did the preschool thing, still did the Wednesday night thing. And then fast forward to the fall. So
how many months?
This is probably 5 months later.
Okay.
So the conference was in April. This is, is September, October. And out of the blue, the pastor at the time says, "So, Julie, do you have a moment to talk?" And I said, "Yeah, what do you like to talk about?" And he's like, "Remember that letter you wrote back in the spring?" And I was like, "Yeah."
I vividly remember that letter.
I remember it really well. He said, "So, is your offer still on the table?"
Oh.
And I was like, "Well, yeah, I guess it still is." So long story short, I said, "Let me just explain to you before you fully commit what you're getting into, because here's my list of changes that I'd like to make, goals that I have for the program. And if you think that these are good for our church, then we've got a deal."
Yeah. Wow. That is a cool story. Like you thought God had opened the door, and then it seemed like maybe it was a screen door.
That's a good analogy.
But then eventually, it was there and you had the opportunity, but you had to wait.
Yes.
And
it's like the doors were open, but it was winter outside, so we didn't really want to go out yet. And I was like, just sit down a sec.
Just wait till the snow melts.
Yeah. Spring.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think in that season, and reflecting, and of course it's easier to see now that I'm away from it, by a few years. But I think in that season, he was using that as a time to help me to learn to trust him and trust his timing. And to help me to learn how to rely on him, where I thought I had the plans. I thought I knew what I wanted to do. And okay, God, here, let's go forward. It was a clear example of how I'm in control and I got this, just trust me. And so in the season, I just had to trust him that he's still calling me to help, and I can still do that with a good attitude.
Yeah.
And then just wait. And if it was really meant to be, it would happen.
Yeah.
And obviously, 14 years later, I think it was meant to be.
Yeah, for sure. Let's take a quick break and hear more about what's happening here at Fellowship.
Hi, this is Benet. Christmas season is upon us. And this year, Christmas Eve falls on a Sunday, so we will be having one gathering at 4 p.m. This is going to be a great opportunity to invite friends and family and come celebrate Jesus with our traditional candlelight service. We'll see you then.
Welcome back to the ForYou podcast, Women's Takeover Edition. So we have Julie here, and we've been talking a little bit about her journey to becoming staff at Fellowship. And one thing that stuck out to me when you were talking was you had a list of 16 things that you came to the elders and staff with that you would like to change and improve regarding the children's ministry. So I have to know, what are some of the things on that list?
That's a really good question. So probably the first initiative that I just had to correct. If you came into Fellowship and you had kids and let's say you had somebody in the preschool room and somebody in the elementary room, they were not in the same space. They were not even in the same wing. You would go to one side of the church to drop off your preschooler, and actually probably at the time you would drop your elementary kid off there as well. But then a teacher would lovingly come and gather your children and take them to another room on the whole other side of the building.
Okay.
And then after the service, you'd have to hunt to find out where you would find your kids.
If I'm recalling, the nursery was right at the entrance.
Correct. That is true.
Which just sounds crazy to me. Why would you want the littlest babies so close to the entrance? Protect them.
Protect them, right, exactly. Fortunately, they were behind some double doors, so, that could stop any nefarious underhanded dealings. But all of that to say, one of the first things I wanted to do was to create a children's wing where you would go and you knew that all of the kids were in one space, and if you were a visitor, you wouldn't be like freaked out because you'd be leaving your kids in multiple different spaces, or you'd be dropping them off in one space, but then picking them up in another. Like from my perspective, like thinking through the lens of an outsider, like that just did not seem welcoming.
Yeah.
So one of the first things I did was make that change happen. And you might think that it was a quick decision like that, but no. I think I met with every committee the church had at the time multiple times in order to cast the vision for why we would need to do this, and then negotiate how we could move what the current uses of the spaces were into other areas so that we could create this space for the kids. And after a lot of late night meetings, a lot of prayer, a lot of discussion, a lot of plans, we finally made it happen. And it was a good thing. And out of that, we were also able to decorate the classrooms because we had, drab walls. And so we put themes in the classrooms. We had the underwater room. We had the mountain room, the digger room, and even the zoo room for the littles. And so that created an environment that was a fun place for the kids to attend. So
yeah, that's awesome. I feel like, well, I was a kid here at Fellowship, and so I remember things got more exciting when we were all close by, and like I had younger siblings, and so it was cool to all be in the same area. Honestly, it was a good time.
That's good feedback. That's good to hear. But the next part, one of the next big changes to go along with that is we weren't so concerned about child protection safety. It wasn't that
Back
we didn't
then.
have rules, because we did. We wanted two adults to be together if they were with kids and all of that kind of stuff. But we had no system for a parent to check a kid in or to pick up a child. And so the next big thing that we implemented was a sign in and a sign out system.
Yeah.
So we bought a computer and we bought pagers. A parent would have a pager. So if there was a problem with their child, they would receive a page and they would
cool.
know. I know. They would know
I
to
feel
go
like we
out.
need those still.
We probably do. I know it's kind of dating our organization to talk about pagers, because I don't think anybody carries a pager anymore. But it was really helpful. Like parents knew then, especially if they were visitors, that if there was a problem with their child, we would let them know.
Yeah, that would make me feel a lot more comfortable if I was a parent bringing my kid somewhere new and leaving them with other people. Yeah.
Yes. And then likewise, we would have a name tag. So, we would know the name of the child in case there was a visitor, and then there would be a tag. So, the parent knew if they needed to get, or when it was time to get their kid, that they would get the correct kid.
Yes. That system right there is brilliant.
Yeah. And then there were other things we implemented too, like, I did intentional teacher training, just like I experienced when I did the CEF training. It was like, okay, we need to be trained as well. So I made sure to be really intentional about that. We also had communications, like there were emails parents could sign up for in order to know what your kid's lesson was going to be for that day. There'd be a question of the week if you wanted the question of the week. And I also started way back then sending birthday cards to kids. And I don't know, if you're like me, a card with something in it is so much more fun than an empty card.
Way better.
So stickers would be in the birthday cards from Miss Julie and all of your friends at the Discovery Zone.
The Discovery Zone. It still is called the Discovery Zone. It's a good name.
And that is another one of the things that came out of our
was the
goals.
name?
Yep.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yep.
So it's been 14 years in ministry, and you alluded to some of the things you were adjusting. What would you say is still challenging to this day, even after how long you've been working and volunteering in ministry?
There's probably many ways I could answer that question, but I think at the crux of it, it's just change in and of itself. Church is one of those very personal experiences that people experience on different levels, and some are passionate about it and some are a little less passionate, and some people embrace change and some are more reticent about change. And so I've experienced, for instance, I talked about our safety measures to, make sure that the kids would be safe, and I had people that approached me and they're like, I can't believe you would ask us to have a name tag for my kids. They've grown up in this church. The people that are watching them have known them all their lives. Why do we need a name tag? And then I would have other people who would be like, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I now see, I can see that, you have the best interest of my kids at heart with this. Thank you. I'm so glad that you're doing this. And so, I'm navigating this, making the people that are frustrated feel heard and still honoring them, but helping them to understand this is something we're still going to do. And so out of that, I think I've learned that if you can cast a vision for the why, people are a lot more willing to accept the what. And if they feel like their voice was heard. So, yes, I appreciate that everybody knows your kid, but let me explain to you what a visitor might feel like who doesn't know you or your kid or any of that kind of thing. And, and even fast forward to now, like we have visitors that come, and I hear from the volunteers, I'm so glad we have the name tags because now I know the baby's name. And the parents, when they come to pick up their kid, they have confidence that, oh, even though I've never met the parent before, I know you're getting the right kid. So it's just necessary to keep persisting, to keep things moving forward.
Right. Yeah. You have to be able to shift their perspective in order for them to ever agree to what's happening.
Exactly.
So you started a lot of the changes that happened in the children's ministry. Would you say in your own life and maybe the places that you had volunteered or even now you volunteer, are you an early adopter to change? Is there a good pace for adopting change? What would you say in, your wisdom and experience you feel about that?
So I tend to like change personally. I think back to when our kids were little and we'd go on vacation, for instance, and I would have to load up the camera and the rolls of film. We would have to get the paper map, and if we were fortunate enough, go to AAA and get a triptych, and then we'd have to. I know, it's a little portable map. It's like MapQuest pre-computers. AAA would put together and have a little yellow line highlighting your route. It was so much fun, fancy. And you'd flip a page to change maps. Oh, so much fun.
I just use Waze.
I know. This is this is the difference in time. It's a good example of change, and then we'd have our little CDs and our DVDs if we had a DVD player in the car, and, you're lugging all of this stuff. And well, now my phone does all of that, and it's, this little teeny tiny device. And so, and that's just one example of where change is good. Like it's so much easier to be able to have everything in a small little compact device versus all of this other stuff. But truth be told, I'm also the one, they're building a new store on the corner by my house. Oh, I can't believe they're changing. Oh, they're building a road through my neighborhood. Oh, I can't believe they're changing. So while I say I like change, I do have my moments where I might be a little later to adopt. And so out of that, I think what that does is it helps give me balance.
Yeah.
Because I can relate with a person who's excited about change, because there are people that, like me, like change. But then when it's something that I understand people are emotionally attached to, I understand that I need to listen. And a lot of times, especially in the world of church, we want to rush change. We want to make things go quickly. But if we can take the time to do it so that people feel valued and feel heard and they understand the whys, then change isn't quite as painful as we think.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a good lesson to any of us who maybe are on the other side of change. We're not initiating it, to try to listen to the why, really pay attention to the why, because we can get really stuck in the how, get really stuck in the, I don't want to have a name tag, or I don't want to have to check my kids in this way. But it's important. The why was what the important part was.
Exactly. And then I have found when people get that why, then we accept that change. And then, let's be real, about 6 weeks later, it's time to change again.
Right. So we are here with Julie, myself, and Danny, and we are going to play a little game, Kids Bible Challenge. And I'm excited about this because I get to play too. Julie here, she is the children's pro, so I feel like she has too much of an advantage. So she's going to be our game host, and it's going to be me versus Danny.
Going down.
You're going down.
I know, it's okay.
And I have control of the questions.
So why don't you real quick share with us what it's going to be like?
All right, there are 5 categories. I will let you know what category it is before we begin. I will read the question. You each have a buzzer. Caitlin is holding a green buzzer, and Danny has the blue buzzer. And once the buzzer shows on my official form, I will let you know if you get to be the one to answer the question. We'll keep track of the score. There are 11 questions. If there's a clear winner at question 10, we'll end there. But if we need a tiebreaker, I have a super awesome number 11 question. So, are you guys ready to begin?
I'm scared.
Me too.
All right. The first question. This is an Old Testament question. Who said, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want"?
I'm just gonna guess.
That would be blue for Danny.
Job?
That is incorrect.
Okay. I couldn't even remember if that was with a
Kate.
Moses?
No. The correct answer would be from the 23rd Psalm, David.
Oh, I'm sitting here thinking about Bible
Oh, wait,
stories.
did you say New Testament?
No, Psalms in the
Okay,
Old Testament.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, wait,
I was sitting here thinking about like Bible characters, which I mean, I guess David is, but Psalm just threw me off.
I'm sorry. Maybe that was our
story,
warm-up
joke.
question.
Like,
Yeah, we'll
We'll just throw that question away.
There was reason.
All right. Question number 1. All right, this is a New Testament question. All right. Who said he would be glad to be a hired servant if his father would take him back? Green for Kate.
The prodigal son.
That is correct.
I thought you would have to say his name.
He doesn't have a name.
I was like, why don't I know the
That's
Bible?
why I was also like, oh no, but yeah.
Yeah, who would have thought kids' Bible trivia would be so complicated? I'll put that in your pile. 1
point.
for Kate. All right, next question. This is an object.
Okay.
An object. What did Zacchaeus climb to see Jesus? That would be Kate for green.
A sycamore tree?
That is correct. 2 for Kate.
I'm sorry, Danny.
No, it's okay. Do your thing.
I know, it was the reflexes on
Yeah,
the
yeah,
thing.
I
There
heard
was a
it.
twitchy delay in the signal. Yeah.
The eggs are on my side.
All right. Okay, next question. This is a number question.
Okay.
Listen carefully, because this is a tricky one. How many days did God take to finish his work in creation? Ooh, blue for Danny.
7.
That is incorrect.
Oh, 6. He rested up.
Caitlin.
6.
Because he rested on day 7. That is correct. Like I said, that one was tricky.
You knew that one though.
Yeah, I know. We all get in the 7 days he created. So, anyways, okay. On to the next question. This is a place.
Okay.
This is a place. All right. Where did Joshua send the 2 spies? In the Old Testament. Joshua. 2 spies.
He sends them to that lady.
That is correct. But I'm asking for a place and not a person.
I don't know.
There were some walls involved. They came down.
I know. Oh. Jericho? No. Yes?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes, that is correct. All right. With some assistance, we'll put that one probably like you get a quarter point for that one.
Oh, okay.
Here's your full point. No, just kidding. Okay. Next one. This is a New Testament question. Okay. Question. Who persecuted the Christians before becoming one? Who persecuted the Christians before becoming one? That would be blue for Danny.
Saul.
That is correct.
I almost said Paul.
I would have taken that one
It's
too.
the same name, just in different languages.
That's right.
Oh.
Yes, I would have given you full credit for either answer. We should probably give you double for getting both. All right, good job. Okay, we are 3 in a lot
That's
for
okay. That one
Caitlin
doesn't have to count.
and 1 for Dan.
I'm disappointed in myself.
5 questions left. We're halfway through. All right, this is an Old Testament question again. Who was the first king of Israel?
First king of Israel.
It's not David.
No, it's not.
Why do I want to say?
I'm having a brain block.
I feel like I need to go back into the box and get out new questions.
Beats me.
All right. The correct answer was Saul.
Oh, yeah.
Saul. He tried to kill David lots of times because he
Yeah.
was a little bit jealous. All right. We're going to brush all of that off. And we're going to go on to a place again. This is a place. Where was the wise man's house built? That would be Kate.
On a rock,
That is correct. The wise man built
not on
his
sand.
house upon the rock.
In cities. Like followed the star.
That was a tricky one.
It was a little tricky. I know. I'm sorry. All right. So this one's going to test your mental capacity. I have confidence in you
These
guys, though.
Because
The other ones have been
haven't.
so
the other
easy.
ones are so
Oh,
easy.
close the door. Okay. So this is a numbers. What is the last word in the Bible?
Amen.
That is correct. Amen is the last word in the Bible.
Let it be, let it be.
All right. Good job. All
That
right.
was a wild guess, but I was like, what else would the Bible end
I was
with?
like,
Right, I know. Jesus. That's the,
Yeah.
usually. I should have probably pulled out 10 answers or questions where the answer would be Jesus, Jesus.
Yeah.
yeah.
Jesus, Jesus. Because that's what you get with kids. Okay. So, which is the greatest? Oh, I'm sorry. This is an object. Which is the greatest? Faith, hope, or love? Danny.
Love.
That is correct. And these 3 remain. And the greatest of these is love. We are to our last card. And the score would be, it looks like 5-2.
So this one is worth 3 because that's
This
what you
one
do
is
when you're playing a kid's game.
4. That's right. It's worth 4. So
No,
anybody
it's,
can
it's
win.
3 because then we'll
So you
tie.
I'm sorry.
That's what you do with kids.
Yes. There's a lot of truth in that statement because after all, we want everyone to be affirmed. Okay. Last question. This is an Old Testament. Old Testament. Which queen had a book of the Bible named after her?
Esther.
I was
would be-
casually going through all of the books in my head.
That's what I was picturing your brains swirling. So
Genesis,
so it looks like, well, Danny, yours now are all worth 4. So it's a tie.
Oh,
I
yay!
answered the hardest questions. That's why.
That's
You
true.
did, obviously.
Exactly.
Thank you for joining us on the ForYou podcast, Women's Takeover Edition. If you enjoyed this podcast, like and subscribe. And if you have any other topics or questions you want us to talk about, feel free to leave it in the comments below.